like I might be flying solo this morning, at least for a little while. This is the Professor. Good morning. Welcome to In Touch News Radio, reality radio, where everyone's a star. So, there are a couple of things that we're going to talk about today, and we're going to start out really bringing this in by talking about how many days we have left until the midterm elections. And I think as of today, we have 193 days left. And I think the Democrats are in trouble. I think they're in big trouble. You know, there's a lot going on. I read an article that was saying that they're predicting a wave, and not a wave that's beneficial to the Democrats. Said that they're looking at, if it's the same, if it holds up that it did in 2010, I believe that they're looking at losing at least 60 seats. Now, I'm sure the Democrats don't want that, and I'm sure my co-host is going to argue that point. But it doesn't look good. I mean, there are a lot of things going on, and the biggest thing is inflation. Previously, there was an article that had inflation, I think it was in March. Inflation was at 7.9%. But now what we have, I think it's like at 8.4. The report that came out that talked about where things stood, and here we are. We have that one that's going to debate why the Democrats aren't going to lose seats and why they may not suffer so greatly at the ballot box in the midterms. But right now, there is something to be said about that inflation.
We talking about me?
Yeah.
You said someone that's going to debate that? I am not here to debate anything. I'm just here. I'm the sidekick. I'm here to make you look good. I'm throwing a little misdirection at you. So you thought you were going to be alone today. Then that you had this, this whole forum for yourself. And DJ CEO was like, "Hey, you need to get in the building." He went around the back, brought me from back in the kitchen with the help, because he wanted to make sure there was going to be some balance to the show today. Okay. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning. Well, things didn't look good. I mean, the report wasn't good, although they call it a first read, but it didn't look good.
Are you talking about the first quarter report?
Yeah.
Oh, come on now. Tell the whole story. Be fair and balanced.
Well, I mean, the numbers look good. Employment is supposed to look good, but, is it solely because of inflation? Is that the whole reason why? So
when you look at the reports that have come out, the biggest issue has been the trade deficit that the United States has found itself in. If you look at all the other indicators, every economist has said our economy is strong. So you have a perfect storm of factors coming together right now. Inflation really wasn't that big of an issue in the first quarter. We had record growth in the GDP in the fourth quarter of 2021, record growth, almost 6%. And what happened was you saw a contraction, but that was due to the lack of workers, the oil issue that we've had out there, a slowdown in imports and a trade deficit, basically. But here's the thing. The economy is still very strong despite those issues. 1.7 million jobs created in the quarter. So all the economists are like, hey, don't worry about this report. This was not a big deal. Inflation, it wasn't the story of the first quarter at all.
Well, okay, I'm looking at it. It says gross job gains, 8.8 million. Loss, 7.5 million.
What
right,
are you
so
looking
there's
at?
A positive.
1.7 million jobs created.
Yeah. I'm looking at the BLS site. That's where I like to go, Bureau of Labor Statistics, so we can keep it fair and balanced. So, again, while the unemployment numbers look good, 3.6, and I am no economist, but why are there so many economists talking about, okay, well, if the feds don't hike up the rates, that's the only way they're going to combat this inflation, get it down, and if they do hike the rates, then we're looking at a recession. So if we're so strong of an economy, why such a bleak picture?
Well, it's not that. I mean, when you think about where we've been on monetary policy the last 6 years.
Okay.
Right?
All
We've
right.
had a ton of free money in the marketplace, plain and simple. You talk to any banker, they're going to tell you that they can't be profitable unless they're roughly about 8% on interest. When's the last time you paid 8% interest on anything? A car, a house, So the banks, and I'm no apologist for the banks. I don't believe that they're losing money by any means, but you've literally had negative interest rates at one point in time here. This is the best time to refinance. You're talking about a 0.5 percentage point over the next quarter that's being proposed by the Fed. So they are raising the rates to actually cool off the economy to some extent to stop the inflation, similar to what you would do with a fire, right? If you had a fire that was out of control, you wouldn't necessarily fan it to slow it down, but you would try to get some of those logs out if you could and sprinkle a little water here, a little bit of water there, if you don't want to take the fire completely out. And that's what they're basically trying to do, keep the fire going without putting it completely out.
Now, I mean, that sounds good. It sounds like Biden is doing a bang-up job.
He is.
But why is his poll number so low?
Because everything is political. I mean, I think you see where Sean Hannity and others, their whole thing is, hey, how can we make this guy a one-term president? What's happened to our country is we continue to put politics in front of what's good for the country. And right now, what's good for the country is the steps that you see President Biden has taken since he's been in office, since January of 2021, the last year and a quarter now.
So that approach is a fairly new approach or approach to what they do to presidents, because President Trump was a one-term president, and they were set out again. I'm old enough to remember when this pandemic started. There was no concern for what this mere virus would do, but they pushed through with an impeachment regardless.
Man,
they didn't care about what was going on.
I didn't even finish my whole coffee, and you brought up Trump already. Come on, man.
But my thing is, you're saying, well, we put politics before what's good for the country. I don't know when that hadn't been the case. At least the one Republican was, I don't know if it's smart enough or dumb enough to say, we're going to make him a one-term president when he said it of Obama. He was just, like I said, dumb enough to say it. It's always been that case. I don't know when, and I'll tell you, and kind of being a bit tangential, which I am very much always am, it's one of the reasons why I left the Republican Party. And since I left, it's one of the reasons why I believe hardly anything I see or read. It's just hard because I don't know the origin, especially at the start of the Ukraine war. I'm being tangential, but if we go back to the start of the war, the invasion, I should say, you're seeing one thing, and then you're seeing on another side, you're seeing how a green screen caused that particular, or is how they put that particular tragedy up on the screen. It was like, that didn't happen. So you would think, well, why would they do such a thing? But it all goes back to me. The basic premise is who's ever in power is going to say what they need to say to drag the other side or make the other side look bad, even when they're not doing what they need to be doing. Trump, there's no defense of what President Trump said and a lot of things that he did. I never try to defend that. The one thing that I did like about Trump was, at least I can say, he was authentic. He may have just been authentically wrong, but he was authentic in what he thought. And you really didn't get the fact, unless there were some obvious things where people told him what to say. You don't have that, but you have that with Biden. So I said a whole lot. Let me come back to, what you said about the political process. With where President Biden is in polling, right? Isn't he like low 30s or mid 30s?
I'm not exactly sure. I know it's not a good number,
right?
But this is. I don't want to mess up your question. I'll come back to this. Go ahead.
Well, so if he's in his, I'm going to say mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
You have people like even Van Jones saying he overpromised, he underdelivered.
I totally disagree with that. I completely disagree with that assessment. Here's the thing. We are as a society, we've become a microwave society that's quick to judge, and we want instant results. And we need to remember exactly where we were when President Biden took over as president. We were still in a position where, yes, the vaccine was finally out, but we had a lot of skeptics. And he made a commitment to get vaccine in arms, and over 200 million people today are vaccinated as a result of that.
But I can't let you off of the hook when you say, yes, there was a vaccine in place, but we had a lot of skeptics. Those skeptics lined up especially in Congress, they lined up on the Democrat side of the House, and they were vocal about, I'm not getting this vaccine. It hadn't been tested. It only took a couple of months and a change of the guard, and voila.
Wait, hold on now.
Yeah.
the most important elected official in the country called the coronavirus a hoax, sat on information for 4 months that he had and was like, it's no big deal, it's just a cold, knowing how dangerous, he had access before anybody else, knowing how dangerous that virus could have been to American lives, did nothing.
Well, it was only speculation because no one knew what would happen now. We're 2 years into it. No one could have, I don't think he had a report that said what we went through now, how the economy tanked.
He saw what was happening in China.
It only had been 4 months. It hadn't been like it was 2 years in China and then he got the report. It was really happening. It started in China, which I'm glad you said that. What are we doing about that? What are we doing about holding China accountable for what they did?
How would you like to hold China accountable for the coronavirus? I mean, I don't want to get off this for a second. Let's stay here. We can come back to that. But let's not forget that it was the birther in truth president at the time who refused to take the virus seriously that put us in the situation that we ended up in and created a number of skeptics. I mean, he refused to wear a mask. It's one of the most simple things. History is going to judge us. We're going to look back and we're going to say, wow, how dumb were we to have debates on whether or not masks help slow the spread of any type of disease. Do you realize the common cold was at its lowest levels in hundreds of years in our country?
When?
Last year and the year before last. Why?
Because we wore masks?
We were wearing masks and we weren't around each other to spread the virus to each other.
Well, but so I find that very odd, and I think a lot of people find it odd. You didn't even hear about cancer. You didn't hear much about the cold because everything was coronavirus. No matter what you had, it was coronavirus.
Because it was real and people died from it. I mean, I know and I have friends that have passed because of it. It wasn't taken seriously enough. But my point is the Biden administration came in and immediately said, in order to get the economy moving in the right direction, we've got to make sure people are vaccinated so they can go to work and we're not spreading this disease. And he's done that. Over 200 million people got vaccinated. We saw tremendous job growth over the last year. Now, I'll give President Trump credit if you'd like and say, hey, maybe that's a holdover from his administration. I wish that they would do the same for President Obama because, you know, Trump inherited a great economy that he actually didn't grow. It started to contract under his last 4 years, but that's, you know, I digress. But when you look at the promises that Joe Biden has made, he has been very thoughtful and deliberate about making those things happen. The biggest one of which we talked about last week, infrastructure bill. I mean, this is something that for decades presidents talked about doing. Trump made it a signature piece. Remember, there's going to be infrastructure week and all this other stuff. Nothing happened. And the problem with the promises and when you deliver on those promises are twofold. One is a messaging issue. Democrats never know how to message. They solve the problem, move on to the next. That's been a consistent issue, right? Even when things are being done well. The second is, it goes back to what I said earlier. We're a microwave society. It's what have you done for me lately? And we're not going to see the true results of the infrastructure bill for probably another decade all throughout the country when bridges are being rebuilt and roads are being fixed and broadband infrastructure is being placed all around the country.
Well, I guess one of the holdups to seeing the fruits of that infrastructure bill would be the distribution channel, the supply chain, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, but the government doesn't control that. That's private industry.
Well, I mean, you do have Pete Buttigieg. I mean, he's supposed to be, what is he?
He's the transportation secretary.
Okay. So why are we still having issues? I don't know that I've heard him articulate any big vision. I don't know that I've heard any round of applause for what he's done.
He's a secretary. Now, there's a lot of round of applause for there's a big round of applause for Governor Abbott stopping all the trucks at the border, which is slowing down progress. We're not talking about that, are we? Because that's impacting the economy negatively. But
he might be frisking them down for all the immigrants that's coming through with this Biden administration. Okay, well, I hear the music creeping up on us. That was our first round. We'll be back after the break. 813-444-9588.
Radio, where you can listen to me cruising full of sweet soul and jazz, today's R&B, and fun touch of hip-hop and gospel.
All my music on one station.
A buffet of music, news, and entertainment here on Touch Radio.
Who doesn't love being number one? When your team is dominating the standings, or your favorite band rocks the charts at number one, it sounds good, right? Kind of like how it feels when you have auto insurance with State Farm. Because making you feel like number one is an honor your local State Farm agent takes seriously. To get the good times and not so good, your State Farm agent's proud to be here to help life go right.
Call Herman White at 961-6661. That's 961-6661.
You've been injured, you deserve help from an attorney that knows how to handle your injury claim. This is Attorney Clinton Paris from the law office of Clinton Paris. For over a decade, I worked for insurance companies, and now I use that knowledge and experience to help people that have been injured. For a free consultation, call me, Attorney Clinton Paris, at 813-413-7924. That's 813-413-7924, or at parislawoffice.com. At the Law Office of Clinton Paris, we take the pain out of being hurt. Offices, Riverview.
By now, we're all aware of the dangers of COVID-19. Like others with existing health issues, cancer patients are at a high risk due to their compromised condition. If you are newly diagnosed with cancer, your care likely can't wait. Moffitt Cancer Center is the best place for your cancer concerns and to provide guidance to help you plan your next steps. We're here for you. Call 1-888-456-2839 or go to moffitt.org/here-for-you.
We want to try. We heard that there may have been some issues with the call-in number. Let me give that number out again, 813-444-9588. Okay. We're going to switch gears a bit and talk about the constitutional carry that Governor DeSantis has been putting out there. And I'll be the first to tell you, as a former Republican, still conservative, now as independent voter, I'm not sure what all the rave is. I'm concerned that this has gained so much traction that he feels the need to fast track this legislation. I just don't know why, and I'm just sharing off air. We had some gunplay way out in Sun City Center, which is just the oddest thing. But
so the retirees are shooting at each other now? What's going on?
It could be. I mean, the economy's slowing down. People thinking about a recession. Hey, man.
Wait. Dude is like, okay, get off my lawn. Bang, bang. Like, what are y'all doing?
I'm not sure, I tell you. But I just don't know. I really don't know why this became all the rave. I don't have concerns in the fact that I think it's going to necessarily increase in gun violence, but it's definitely going to wag the process, because now if you don't need a permit to carry, a license, if you don't need a license to conceal carry, and they're talking about open carry, that sets the optics are bad. And it doesn't favor well for African Americans. So I'll just go ahead and say that, and that's probably subconsciously what's driving me to this point. What do you think about that?
I don't think there's anything for me to say. You said everything that needs to be said. No, you're 100% right. Whoa, dang, did I say that?
Yes.
Dang, I'm gonna ban myself from coming back on this show for a while. No, Professor, you're right. Back in 2015, when I was in the legislature, 2016, we dealt with the open carry proposals at the time. Thankfully, at the time, the Senate refused to take up the legislation and it died. But, there seems to be this obsession with the Second Amendment, and it's a misapplied obsession, in my opinion, with one particular party that is constantly talking about the rights of gun owners. And we've seen it in political campaigns where people say, this candidate is coming to take your guns away, which is not the case. I think when you talk about the Second Amendment, it's about how it's being applied. So this concept of constitutional carry, it's dangerous. In fact, if you talk to most law enforcement officials, they'll tell you not only are they not in favor of open carry, they certainly don't want constitutional carry. The nightmare scenario for a law enforcement officer is they show up to a scene where there's been a shooting, and there are multiple people with guns there, and there's a couple bodies on the ground.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Naturally, people have to be interviewed, but who was the shooter and why? Stand your ground is particularly dangerous. But imagine a state like ours where you have, we're the original state for stand your ground, and you couple that with constitutional carry, meaning the right to just carry the gun without a permit, concealed or otherwise, not openly, but concealed.
Right.
That is a recipe for disaster at a time when gun violence in American cities is on the rise. We're seeing crime and gun violence like we saw in the early part of the 90s.
And I'm going back to the article now because I may have put those two terms together. I know it's constitutional carry, but I've seen so much about open carry. So this is this is strictly constitutional carry.
Mm-hmm. Meaning you don't have to go through any licensing process. You can keep that gun on your person as long as it's not open and visible.
Right. Now, there's some states with open carry. I understand. From my understanding, there are very few, but there
Texas.
are some states. Right.
And that's who the governor's trying to compete with. If we're going to throw all our cards on the table, that's what this governor is trying to do. He's trying to out Texas in order to win the Republican nomination for president. It goes back to, I was jokingly but half seriously talking about Governor Abbott in Texas stopping the trucks at the border. He's doing that not because all of a sudden there's these refugees sneaking into the country. He's doing it because it got him national press. When he put the refugees on a bus and sent them to D.C. to put them in the president's lap, it's
good
to
move,
get media.
Governor Abbott. Good move.
Well, good news if you're into communications and you want to be able to message, but it does nothing if you're looking at this from what's the right thing to do or a legal perspective. So what does our governor do? Our governor says, I'll trump you. I get it, Trump you. I'm going to go after our state's largest employer and put a $2 billion tax on the backs of the taxpayers of Osceola and Orange County. And I'm going to go after Disney. Right away, conservative news stopped talking about what Abbott was doing and started talking about what DeSantis was doing because he was going after a woke corporation. Well, what happens this week?
You're right. And to your point, he did. The clip that I saw, he did mention Texas leading away.
Oh my God!
So, in essence, that's why he's jumping on the bandwagon and joining these 25 other states.
Look, I have no problem with people legally going through a process to own a firearm. I think it's your right.
Here is the part of that. I don't want to say it gives it a bit of credence, but there's some truth to what he said. And he says that there are some state officials who are against the Second Amendment. Now, that just could be followed just to, make his point. But I'll tell you, when I applied for mine, and first of all, being ex-military, so I'm going to be a bit open here. Being ex-military, being young, my dad used to always tell me, hey, don't carry your gun around like... but my dad's real conservative, and obviously, from a different generation, don't put yourself in a bad situation is really what he was saying. But I'm in Florida. I'm in the Navy. I'm in Florida. It's a different world. And it came back to haunt me. I got stopped on a traffic violation, and they took my gun. I thought I lost my gun privileges. 20 years had gone by, and I was like, hey, I don't know what made me do it, but I contacted the governor's office, and they tell me, no, you never lost your gun privilege.
Right.
They took my gun, and they told me that they were taking it. They weren't going to return it. And I was young, going through some other things, getting out of the military. But when I applied for the license, it took like 3-4 months to be approved. That was...
Why do you think that was?
Well, once it took long enough, I'm thinking, okay, because I'm African American, they don't want me to have a gun.
No.
Here's the thing, but that's what I thought. So I go through the process, and that's when I purchased my first gun. Saw another little vintage gun I wanted and went to purchase that. Another 3 months. So I contact the Florida Department of Agriculture, whatever it is, and got someone in charge, and she said, well, I'm not sure why they're doing this to you. They shouldn't be taking this long, especially since you just went through a background check in less than a year. If anything, they're going to follow up within that time. I really thought it's because what you have to check on the application. I'm an African-American man trying to buy a gun, and this is his second gun. You can't tell me that they're not keeping stats on that. I mean, of course they are. But why do you think it took that long?
Because we're the third largest state in the country. You've got... smaller departments in government. The Department of Agriculture is not particularly big, and they're responsible for reviewing and approving or denying all of the permits for people who want to carry concealed weapons. And at the end of the day, to get that license, it does require a background check to make sure you don't have any, previous felonies, et cetera. You're not on a domestic abuser list and things of that nature. So, at one point in time, I had a concealed weapons permit. I allowed it to lapse because I found myself over that time period never needing to really carry the gun. And then, of course, we're in Florida. So we have laws on the books where in an emergency, in a state of an emergency, anyone can openly carry a gun. Did you know that? That was something that was passed by the legislature back in 2016. It was crazy, but if you can imagine during the hurricane.
What was it again?
In a state of emergency declared by the governor, Floridians are allowed to openly carry a weapon. So think of a hurricane situation.
Oh, okay.
You don't need to have a license or a permit to actually openly carry at that point in time, as long as it's a declared emergency.
Didn't know that, but
yeah.
okay.
But you see, a lot of our legislators, they pass these bills thinking we're in a rural area, and they forget about the urban areas. And that's the problem with constitutional carry. I just think the idea of everybody walking around with a gun on their hip waiting for a problem to happen is a bad recipe. Law enforcement's not going to be able to handle this situation. I think it puts them in a more dire situation than they deserve to ever be put in, trying to figure out who the aggressor was or why people, why all these people are strapped now. Can you imagine being, 22 years old and going to a nightclub and, people are there, obviously in their cars, in their trunks, just loaded down legally. Right. Now, I'm not talking about, and I had this discussion with somebody this week and they were like, yeah, but the people that are illegal, they're going to carry their, yeah, that's true. But I mean, do we really need to deputize every citizen of the state of Florida? I don't think so.
Now, there's some training that's implied that's always best practice that you go through. I went through a couple of them. I continue, and, I joined the CCW, whatever it is. So there are a lot of training that one can take, but most people won't take that. The ones that need to take it won't take it.
That's right.
And you're right. To a large degree, someone's going to walk around. Someone's going to be in the store. They're going to bend over. Constitutional carry, going to bend over, the gun is going to be exposed. There's going to be a Karen or a Ken in that store.
Oh, Lord.
It's going to call the cops outside, but they're going to start it in the store. You know how Karen, it happens every time. And now that cop has to make a
judgment call, right? Sir, can I talk to you for a second? Well, what? I just got my coffee at 7-Eleven. Well, there's a report of somebody with a weapon in here. Yeah, but I have a right to carry this gun under constitutional carry under the state of Florida. Well, sir, I'm sorry. It was a report. Somebody thinks a crime is about to be committed. Can you please stop? What?
Well, there is where
then?
we agree, because I don't think that's a good idea. I really don't.
But you believe that the Second Amendment, everybody should be able to carry a weapon that wants to carry one? I mean, because I'm just curious.
I believe that everyone should
you're
have
independent.
to own a weapon. I don't know so much about carry. Now, again, with mine, since part of my thing is what I'm trying to grow is a drone. I'm not going to put myself out in a situation where someone sees that drone up in the air and like, hey, we're just going to take his drone. His drone's got a couple of grand. That's not going to happen. But I don't think everyone should carry, no.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
So the other day I was stopped by the police, and I couldn't figure out why they stopped me. But you know how you can tell when the police is going to stop you. And they pulled me over and asked me, for my license. I said, why'd you pull me over? He said, well, you ran a stop sign. I said, what do you mean? What stop sign? So we had this, and the police officer came to the right side of the car, and I had to reach over and give him my information. I gave him my driver's license, and I gave him my concealed weapons card. And
smart move.
I said, so you said you saw me run the stop sign. Do you have video of that? He said, no, I don't have a video of that. I said, well, you didn't see me run the stop sign. So he said, I'll be back. So he went and checked and came back. And while he was gone, I looked to my left. Right, standing behind me was another police officer, quiet as a mouse.
That's how we do.
He scared me. And at that point, he wanted to do some small talk. I said, I don't want any small talk. I said, I'm going to put my hands outside my window because I don't want anything to go wrong. But my point is this. I've had my concealed weapons license for a number of years now, and I will continue to have it, and I do carry my weapon. But there is a certain amount of fear and anxiety that is automatically placed upon a black man that I find myself, after it was all over with, I found myself just screaming to the top of my lungs, I hate the police. I hate the police because I hate the feeling that I get from just a traffic stop. It would be different if I if I knew I was going to get a ticket. Just give me my ticket and let me go. But it's that feeling that I think is it's just an unfair situation for black men.
The minute you started talking, you could hear the stress in your voice from that situation. I think we're having some volume issues. But the minute you started talking about that, I knew you were going to say you got pulled over. Here's the thing. When I try to explain to some of my white counterparts about the love-hate, for lack of a better term, relationship the African-American community has with law enforcement, the only thing that seems to get their attention is when I tell them that every black man you know has had a negative interaction with the police. Every single one, regardless of their education level, regardless of their age. So that tells you there's a systemic problem that needs to be rooted out. But we can talk a little bit more about this when we come back from the break. I hear the music. You are on with In Touch Radio, straight up the
providing the highest quality, professional, and caring service for your family. Call Jeffrey Rhodes at 813-253-3419. That's 813-253-3419. Or visit him at 301 North Howard Avenue, Tampa, Florida. Ray Williams Funeral Home for the finest care and quality service.
You've been injured, you deserve help from an attorney that knows how to handle your injury claim. This is Attorney Clinton Paris from the law office of Clinton Paris. For over a decade, I worked for insurance companies, and now I use that knowledge and experience to help people that have been injured. For a free consultation, call me, Attorney Clinton Paris, at 813-413-7924. That's 813-413-7924, or at parislawoffice.com. At the law office of Clinton Paris, we take the pain out of being hurt. Offices Riverview.
Hey, this is Agent Wright, better known as Mr. Clean. Looking for some great barbecues? Come see them two burgers and grill, located at 423 Virginia Street, Charleston, West Virginia. We got ribs, chicken, pulled pork, brisket, collard greens, mac and cheese, baby. Come get some and get you a nice, smooth cigar. 304-550-4431. That is 304-550-4431. Come get some, baby. The Rib Man, mama, the Rib Man.
Let me give that number out one more time, 813-444-9588. Sounds like I chewed that up. Sounds like I'm from South Carolina when I said that. That number. Okay.
A lot of great people from South Carolina.
Of course, of course.
Don't say Clarence Thomas, because I'm going to walk out of here.
I'll just say Jim Clybourne.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's all right.
Was my dad's. He was either one of my dad's college instructors or something like that. My dad knows him. But anyway.
All right. We can agree there. And USF alum Judge Michelle Childs was in South Carolina as well.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Go Bulls there.
Well, Herschel Walker's not from there, but he makes his stops through there a lot. But anyway, let's go. I digress. Picking up on this issue about the constitutional carry and some of the experiences that we have had as African American men, I'd have to say that I don't know if it's because of my background coming from a strict home and then going into the military, where of course there's more structure. You're being told what to do, what you can't do. You really can't balk against authority. I've had some interaction with law enforcement, and Lord knows they haven't all been positive, but I've never thought, I fear, and this is like what Chris Rock said, I fear the guy walking behind me in the hood more than I fear the white cop 2-3 in the morning on the side of the road.
So
and that's kind of tough to say. You know why I say that? When the last time, and you can go back to, like I said, some of the jokes people say. When was the last time you saw a white cop just walk up behind a guy and shoot him for no reason?
So
that just happened in Georgia, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So when was the last time you saw a white cop? Now that's just because we're talking about white cop, black guy. When the last time you seen a white cop just walk up behind the guy as soon as he gets out of his vehicle, pulls up, shoots him point blank? You typically don't see that. Now you have some horror cases where something like that has happened, but that's not the experience that I have. It's not the experience I had when I was clubbing in the streets. Because when I'm leaving the club, 1, 2, that's why I said 3 in the morning. I'm not worried about the cop. That's not who I'm worried about. When I'm out drinking, when that car drives slow up the street, it ain't a cop. It's my people. And we're getting shot more by. So I'm talking about that scenario in the streets. And you guys may be talking about when you're leaving somewhere else. I'm talking about that typical scenario that a young African-American man is in. It's typically when he's on his leisure, when a lot of that stuff happens late night. Like they said, nothing good happens after 11 o'clock. But just being serious about it, I don't have that same, I don't share that same experience. I do understand the experience that a lot of my male friends have had. And like I said, all of mine haven't been positive, but I also know the situation that I put myself in a lot of times. I was a knucklehead back then. There were a lot of things I shouldn't have even been half those places.
So I'm going to thoroughly disagree with you. I was waiting for that to happen today. I thought we were a little too kumbaya-ish to start out. But, in terms of that fear, I'm not afraid of my own people, right? We were talking about this earlier. We live in West Tampa. And, there's good and there's bad that comes along with that, but it's largely been good. It's sad to see some of our history, slowly eroding because the neighborhood is gentrifying. Daryl said I live downtown. But unfortunately, we still have a lot of the old effects going on still in the neighborhood. But it is what it is. I wanted my children to have an authentic experience like I did growing up. And I'm not trying to be out at 2 a.m, but when I am, and I have been, even in my older age now, I'm not really worried about people that look like you and me because I give them the benefit of the doubt first, and they don't have any power or agency over me like a police officer does. And that's the problem. Our law enforcement officials are given certain abilities to detain us on a suspicion. As you know, the term probable cause. 9 times out of 10, when you're stopped, they will tell you they stopped you for a reason. That's their probable cause, and then gives them the right to then violate your civil rights by searching through your car.
Right.
And there's a whole look. Never litigate on the street. I can tell y'all that right now, especially
Thank
for all
you
the
for saying that,
non-lawyers.
because that's the issue that I see. That's where it goes wrong.
But
90% of the time.
But the problem is this: if I've got a cop who's scared, and he happens to be white, he's already afraid pulling over a black man. His thought is, all black people are thugs. This guy's probably got a gun in the car. I'm probably going to lose my life. There's a way he's approaching my vehicle that he's not approaching somebody else's. And he has the agency, that's going to be the word of the day, to do whatever is needed to protect himself and put me in harm's way potentially while doing that. One of the things that I learned early on from my parents was if an officer tells you get out of the car, you might as well tell them to put you under arrest, because at that point they're responsible for you and anything that were to happen to you, right? So you're supposed to stay in your car with your hands at 10 and 2, or at least in a place outside the window like you did where they can see it. But anyway, I digress. My issue is simply that power is sometimes abused by those officers. Not all the time. My brother is law enforcement. I'm a firm backer of law enforcement because I believe they have the toughest jobs in the country.
They do.
But the fear that all black people, black women especially, I think Sandra Bland's death really shone a light, because we always say black men, but black women are under attack as well when they're dealing with law enforcement, because they, more than anybody, they know their rights, and they're going to tell you their rights. I want to know why I'm being stopped.
Right.
And I hate to say it, and this is going to sound so racist, but sometimes white men in those positions don't want to hear a black person, especially not a black woman, talking back to them. And that's how situations get escalated, because they don't stay in their professional lane. They're looking at it like, oh, you can't tell me what to do, and you certainly ain't going to be dictating this situation. I'm the one with the badge. I'm in control. And that's how things spiral and people lose their lives.
I wanted to end the scenario that I talked about with the police officer. When he was asking me all those questions, I had all these thoughts going through my head. Daryl, are you doing the right thing? Are you saying the right things? Don't do anything stupid. So I didn't think about what it was that he actually pulled me over for. So when he left and went to the car, I had time to think about what I did. And I realized that, those walking lanes where they put the flashing light up and then they stop? Well, the flashing lane was right there at the street that I was coming off of. So it was on red, the cars were stopped. So I kind of gave myself the permission to keep on going because no traffic was coming. That traffic was stopped. So when the police officer came back and gave me my information, he said, listen, I'm not going to give you a ticket this time. I just want to let you know what you had done wrong. I said, officer, I appreciate that, but you're absolutely right. I did run that stop sign, and here's why. But it took me a minute to realize what I had done, and had I not felt so pressured in that situation, it would have been automatic. It used to be automatic. This is the second time I've been stopped by a police officer in the last 2 years, and I've had this tremendous amount of fear
and anxiety. Right?
And anxiety. That was the word I was
that.
looking for.
Yeah.
Anxiety about what's going to happen.
Do you think, and this is a question for any white listeners out there, that our white counterparts have the same level of fear when they're stopped by the police?
Not at all.
Why is that?
Because they're not dying at the hands of the police officers in exorbitant rates.
I would agree with that. I think, all of us got to talk when we started driving about how we're supposed to interact with law enforcement when we're stopped. And that talk was developed because of the outcomes on the side of the road where people were being shot and killed by officers and then stories being made up to cover it up. What's sad is today, 2022, these situations are still going on. We saw one in Georgia last week. There was another one in Michigan where an officer had his knee in the back of the person's neck and was trying to detain him and shot him in the back of the head. And they continue to try to cover these things up. And that's why there's a distrust there. That's what I try to explain to my white counterparts. It's not just something that we've made up or is now wired into our DNA because of some historical situation. These things are still happening. They're still getting filmed, which is the amazing part, and you're still seeing people walk despite the film. That's the part that's crazy.
But I think to keep those, I think we have to strike a balance because while we're all not the same age, there's a certain generational upcoming that we can always go back to. Our parents instilled in us a certain, I'm going to say a certain value, but also from their experience, certainly my parents, being from Charleston, South Carolina, in their 70s, so you know the time that they grew up in. So certainly they're going to make sure if I'm in that situation to act accordingly. That's why my dad was so concerned when I had the gun, when I had purchased my gun. Now, but we can't excuse a very large percent of the behavior when these young African-American men are being stopped. The first thing they want to do is, why you stop me? I ain't going to do nothing. No, you tell me why you stop me. That's always a losing situation. I mean, live to fight another day. If they wrong you, sue them, but live to fight another day. You're hardly going to win that battle on the street trying to litigate, trying to buck authority, getting your girlfriend to record it so it can just go live on the internet.
Oh no, wait. I'm a firm believer. If you got a phone in that car, you got another person there, put that sucker on.
Cut it on.
The interaction.
But so while I don't disagree with that, there was a meme that I saw that people were saying how technology is ruining us, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone has a cell phone. But there was also a screenshot from like the 60s or the 70s where people were reading newspapers in diners. They were actually reading content. There's a difference. There is nothing before cell phones had the ability to even take a picture, to hold a picture. There were always cops. There were always shootings. There were always shootings in the hood. There were always shootings by cops. That does not make the difference. I don't understand why that makes the difference. It makes a difference
because those things that we were told from your parents, my parents, and even some of my experiences growing up in New York City in the 90s, those were stories. No matter what I tell you, it's a story. Today, it's not a story. It's a video. And here's actually what happened. Here's the audio recording. And so many of those videos and audio recordings have gone on to validate what people have said. It's gone so far that I think it was 2017, the state of North Carolina legislature, they introduced legislation to prevent citizens from recording police interactions, under the argument that it was an interference into the investigation that was taking place.
Well, they have to have some boundaries, because people are getting to the point where while the officer's trying to restrain somebody, they're trying to get the person's facial expression. They have the phone. You cannot obstruct that, especially when there's nothing wrong when it's illegal. I'm just using the term illegal and a proper takedown. You have people in the back that's egging it on. Oh, you can't do that. When a person's in the wrong, clearly in the wrong. The behavior doesn't change.
And you know what those recordings do, which is why I've been an advocate of body cameras forever. It also validates the officer that they did everything that they were supposed to do. Okay. So that's why I don't ever have a problem with the recording. I mean, we've got cameras on our stoplights and things of that nature, which in some senses skews towards favoring the government, right, in a situation where there's a problem. But here's ultimately, if you want to stop a lot of these shootings that happen on the side of the roads during police interactions, there should be a uniform policy that if a suspect, and I'm using that term loosely right now, gets out of the vehicle and runs, that the officer's not allowed to chase him. Let's think about that for a second.
I agree with that.
Whoa, what?
Yeah. Most of these shootings involve police officers trying to apprehend a suspect that decides to run, whether they're tussling with them in the car or the person runs and then they chase after them. And what we see happen is the adrenaline starts going. We've seen cases where people have been shot in the back, where people have been tackled and then they've been shot. But at the end of the day, think about this. I stopped your car. I got your plates. I got some evidence in the car. Hey, if I caught you once, I can get you again. But the idea of chasing these suspects, I don't think we should be doing that anymore, because that leads to those interactions that we don't want.
Unless it's a bank robbery or a murder, a mass murder or something like that. But 90% of the times, it's a minor infraction.
For trafficking, and you know that when you have access to the, police logs or whatever from the communications log, why they stop, because they have to radio that in why they stop, right? So that's justified if it's a minor traffic infraction. But I'm not sitting here going to believe most of these chase downs and these outright brawls that we catch are traffic infractions. They're typically more serious than that. And we're talking about career criminals who know in New York now, and I'm repeating a right talking point, up in New York, who know once they get caught, they're going to be released. No bail. So you're telling me don't chase them, let them get away with the crime. Let me just chase them tomorrow. If I catch them tomorrow, it's good. If I don't, we're not just chasing this guy every day until we catch him. We're going to get a track
You got his
star.
evidence. You got his picture on your body cam. If you got him once, you get him again.
He's a career criminal. Who cares?
He ran a stoplight.
Oh, my goodness. We'll be back.
Now, some people are going to say,
Who doesn't love being number one? When your team's dominating the standings, when your favorite band rocks the charts at number one, it feels good, right? Kind of like how it feels when you have auto insurance with State Farm. Because making you feel like number one is an honor your local State Farm agent takes seriously. To get the good times and not so good, your State Farm agent's proud to be here to help life go right.
Call Herman White at 961-6661. That's 961-6661. By now, we're all aware of the dangers of COVID-19. Like others with existing health issues, cancer patients are at a high risk due to their compromised condition. If you are newly diagnosed with cancer, your care likely can't wait. Moffitt Cancer Center is the best place for your cancer concerns and to provide guidance to help you plan your next steps. We're here for you. Call 1-888-456-2839 or go to moffitt.org/here for you.
Been in a car crash? Call Ricky. Don't know what to do? Ask Ricky. We'll connect you with a lawyer and doctor experience in auto accident injury. Call Ricky at 844-363 361-7425. After an auto accident, you have 14 days to seek medical attention. You may be in pain, so call Ricky, ask Ricky for your best options. 844-361-7425. Call Ricky, ask Ricky is a legal and medical referral service. The lawyers in our network pay to receive referrals.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here with the professor on Straight Up the Middle on In Touch News Radio, where everybody can be a star. In the studio with us is the professor, and of course, DJ CEO is here running the board for us. I wanted to take a moment today to extend condolences to the family of Teresa Jean-Pierre Coy. Yesterday was her wake, and later today at Bible-Based Fellowship will be the funeral. And for those of you who knew Teresa, the first word that just every time I say her name pops into my head is warrior. Not because of the fight she put up against breast cancer, but because of the fight that you would see her put in the courtroom for people that most people in society would want to throw away. She always defended those who you could almost argue were indefensible. Many of you may recall the Stand Your Ground shooting, the Dretka case over in Clearwater. She came onto that case late and served as a part of his defense, and that caused and rubbed some people the wrong way. But if you're a lawyer and you stand by your oath and you understand the judicial process and what needs to happen, you know that everybody, whether they're presumed to be guilty or innocent, has the right to a vigorous defense. And that's the type of person she was. She was willing to go out there and defend this individual who many in the community felt was guilty, and ultimately I believe he was found guilty and sentenced. But that's the type of person that she was in the courtroom, just a fierce warrior and a fighter. But better than that, she was a friend. She was an advocate for our communities in ways people don't even realize. Just a strong woman, and it is a huge loss. At 41 years old, just a huge loss for this community. Former bar president of JIBA, and she leaves behind her husband, Travis Coy. Our prayers are with him today. And most significantly, their son, Thaddeus. So, all of us here at the radio station just send our condolences to the entire family and to her sorors of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We know this is a tough period, and our prayers and thoughts are with you all. So, Professor, what do you want to close out the day with?
Well, I'm hearing that there's a lot of infighting going on within the parties, and what's so funny is the way I'm hearing it, still on the conservative side of the house, is that Democrats are fighting about Biden is not really coming off as strong as he needs to. There's not enough voter excitement. Midterms are coming up. Immigration is bad. The economy is not as strong as people want to sell it to be. And then you have inflation. But what I thought was also funny was they were saying Republicans aren't off the hook because we have our own issue to deal with.
You say something about insurrection?
and
what did you say about text messages? I'm sorry.
Would be President Trump. That's the issue that they still have to deal with. And you couldn't. The one thing I'll say about Trump is this guy lands almost like a cat sometimes. Because now with Elon Musk.
That's a big cat.
Right? A big one, right? With Elon Musk buying Twitter, Trump saying he's not going to go back on Twitter. But just the fact that now Twitter may be changing hands, and so a lot of that right-leaning speech that was banned and outright just they were shadow banned, they were silenced on Twitter, can come back.
Wait, did you say Twitter was being purchased by an African American? Because that's what some people were saying on the internet.
Oh my God! And see, this is what the right. This is what I hate about the far right when they do that. Now, his dad, you got the same thing. I mean, yeah, his dad may be from South Africa, but stop that. And I mean, I'm not disputing what his parents were and are, but let's just not do that just to make a point. Oh, now the left has a problem with it. And I read, I'm like, see, this is why I don't. No, my people won't even do right either. Stop that. But getting back to the issue, kind of closing out, I read an article saying that what is the New York Attorney General Bragg? Alvin Bragg or whatever.
Letitia James. Are you talking about the DA in Manhattan?
Oh, the
or
DA,
the,
right.
or the AG?
Because Trump is about to beat one of those, right? I think that case.
He's not going to beat any of them. He's stalling them out like he's always done.
Well,
$10,000 a day he's being fined, and he refused to pay it. And ultimately, it's going to be like every
because
other
they're
venture.
looking for text messages, right?
No, he refuses to turn over records, and he's been found in contempt, and he's basically willing to pay the fee.
Wait a minute. Let me stop. I thought I heard it was emails that they were looking for. I thought it's specifically that they were emails that they were looking for, and that he and his lawyer said that they don't have any emails. And it's rumored that he doesn't really use email, and it was for that reason for many years he doesn't really use email.
All I know is he's been found in contempt, and he is not complying. And I wish I had $10,000 a day that I could just throw away like that. But ultimately, justice is going to be served. I believe in the process, and I don't think anybody's above the law. This man is going to go down. The more information that continues to come out about the commission that's been formed to investigate the insurrection that happened on January 6th, the text messages from his chief of staff to media personalities like Sean Hannity, to a sitting Supreme Court justice's wife, for God's sake.
There's nothing wrong
they
with that.
are so damning.
You're talking about optics. There's nothing illegal about that.
No, but what they were advocating for was illegal. The overthrow of the United States
They
government.
never said overthrow.
They don't have, you don't have to say the words.
But see, we get
in
back
order
to get back to the messaging.
Oh my God!
Right?
Yeah.
You say the messaging. You don't think that the voting public, and I think you can kind of blur the lines. Biden is having enough issues. Inflation is real. The price at the store is real. You think they really believe that in midterms you're still talking about something January 6th or 2? You think that they really are waiting for that, or they're thinking that Democrats once again don't have anything? So let's smear Trump because he is still our biggest issue.
That's not the issue. See, the idea of saying that Democrats are only investigating what happened on January 6th is because they're trying to smear someone that they want
They don't want him to run again.
to run again is ludicrous.
Really?
We saw an insurrection. We saw a deliberate, violent, potential overthrow of the United States government, something that hasn't happened since the Civil War. That has to be investigated. And what makes it worse is that you have ties that go directly to the highest office in the land. You can't ignore that. That has to be investigated.
we
and it's a
can't ignore
bipartisan
it.
commission, by the way.
It's a bipartisan commission, but Democrats are struggling in the poll. And if they, okay, let's split hairs. Let's say this one, because I'm looking at it, and this is a New York Times. The New York Times grand jury investigates President Trump expires next week, will not be extended. The jury failed to find any crimes against President
That's
Trump.
one of the cases.
One of the cases.
Because there's several.
Okay, so here's the thing. These are also out in the news. What the Democrats hope that voters see and think, we still got them. Man, and this is a big case.
That may
I don't
be,
think it's going to happen. You guys,
there may be some on the political spectrum of things that think that way, but here's what you got to remember. I can't tell you the last president that during the midterms, his party remained in power when they had all the chambers of government. It hasn't happened in a very long time. So this is what I'm saying is the natural course of government that the sitting president always, if his party's in power, loses those chambers, the legislative chambers. So there won't be anything unusual here. What Republicans need to be concerned about is in 2024. Okay, when they get back into the Congress, if they're able to,
we're getting that in the midterm.
well, if it happens, whether or not they're going to be able to maintain that quote unquote power into 2024, and I don't think that's going to
No,
happen.
I agree. I do agree with that.
Because you don't have any ideas on the right.
But the issues that I guess it falls back to that one joke, and it's going to be a joke. How can a guy who got 81 million votes be struggling this much so soon in his presidency?
Every president in their first
Every
term
president
has
didn't get 81 million
low-
votes. Trump set the record for a sitting president. This guy set the record for any president.
Right,
And he's
because more
struggling the way he
people
is.
got engaged in the process and voted than ever before. But I mean, that has the number of votes somebody has gotten has nothing to do with their approval ratings a year later. Almost every president, if you go back to where Donald Trump was in 2017, after a year, he was in a low. If you look at President Obama in 2009, before the Affordable Care Act, he was at a low.
But
It happens to every president.
You're right, but when we look at the actual percentage, Joe Biden was even lower than President Trump. That's what the fear factor is on the left. Trump was never a popular president. He was only polarized because the left hated him so much.
Listen, if Joe Biden eliminates all our student loan debt, he gonna be king of the United States of America, and I'm done for the
Well,
day,
he's-
ladies and
yeah.
gentlemen. That's all I got to say. So
Yep.
we will put his face on our money going forward. All right, we'll make him the king of Wakanda.
Well, it's been great. It's just good being back in the saddle. I'm going to miss you guys next week. This is the end of the show, straight up the middle. We'll see you next week.
Good luck to the Brothers of Zeta Chi chapter out there on the links today, and to the People's Champ, and to the Zeta Chi Champ. Wendy P, let's bring it home. Legendary Management.
You've been injured, you deserve help from an attorney that knows how to handle your injury claim. This is Attorney Clinton Paris from the Law Office of Clinton Paris. For over a decade, I worked for